So one of the things we need to talk about is how diversity even comes to be in the first place. Now, the obvious answer to that is evolution, right? But you may not remember some processes with evolution, and at some point in your head, you're going to think, well, if evolution leads to all these diverse species, all these different species, what about extinction? Is extinction part of evolution? Yes, it is, right? Things that are not best fit must go extinct, and new species may come to be, or they may go out altogether. And I'm going to explain some of that right here. So the first thing we need to talk about is just an average of a population. So let's say body size, for instance. If you got a graph, you've got to have axes, okay? Otherwise the graph is pointless. So we got body size on the bottom, and on this side we're going to have number of individuals. So most of the individuals will have an average body size, right? So let's be not particularly scientific about it. We'll call it small, like super small, and huge. So let's take wolves for instance. Okay, let's take wolves. If you show anybody in the world a picture of a wolf, just a silhouette of a wolf, they go, no, wolf, right? They know what that is. And there's a reason for that, okay? That there aren't like, is that a really little wolf? No, there isn't a really little wolf, and I'm about to explain why. So let's say we have just an average sort of population. Some of them are small. The vast majority of them are about the same size. There's some big ones. There's some little ones. If you ever saw that movie, Into the Gray, with Liam Neeson, right? I guess there may be some big ones out there. There's probably some little ones, but most of them are about the same size, right? Now, how this population becomes two different species, okay? Let's say there's a million years goes by and there's now a pygmy wolf and a greater wolf and a lesser wolf, kind of like there are in ducks. And there's the orca whale that you guys are familiar with, and then there's a pygmy orca whale and things like that, right? So how does that even happen? How do we get two new species out of that? Well, in that, it's called disruptive selection. And in disruptive selection, something has happened in the environment or the habitat that is selecting either extreme of the population. Not the middle. The middle's being selected against, okay? And so what we'll have is, let's say there's a habitat change and instead of forests now, there are plains and there are caves, right? And you've seen this in lions, if you're familiar with the natural history of lions, that let's say that the bigger ones are doing great out on the plains because they're big enough to really cover a lot of space. But some of them live in caves, and the really big ones don't do so well in caves because they don't fit. So what will happen is there will start to be a population of small wolves and a population of huge wolves, okay? And so there's been a disruption. That middle part is being selected against. And now there's hardly any normal-sized wolves anymore in this little example that we're doing. And eventually this becomes a species. This becomes a different species. And this becomes a different species. It's supposed to be a bee and becomes... This process is called disruptive selection. And once it becomes two new species and this middle ground is gone, then that's going to be called extinction. And that process of two new species is going to be called speciation. Okay? Speciation is the process of ending up with two new species or more, right? And extinction is where some population has just blanked out altogether. And it may have evolved, that line may just end. That the habitat, the niche that that organism was adapted to is not there anymore. And so that animal had its time, that plant had its time, and now it's gone. And new niches form and new species form to fit that niche. Kind of like I explained, like maybe there's little caves that these new tiny wolves are able to live in. And what you get is a creature kind of like a fox. And maybe with the plains, you would get some particularly large creature that, like the bear dog that once that once existed, right? And is now extinct. But all of that all starts with the speciation and extinction. All it starts with disruptive selection, okay? This is where diversity starts to come from. Okay, one of the other ways that we can get diversity, I've redrawn the graph here. And I've got my average wolf population. Of course, it's all very fictitious, you know, this is just an example. And I've got small ones, large. I think we used the word huge last time, so we'll use the word huge this time. Now, in this type of selection, this population is not being selected against, and so, or selected for, I should say. It's being selected against. Now, what could cause this? Probably, usually when this happens, it's broad-scale climate change or the introduction of a new species. So let's say that there's a new wolf in town. Okay, there's a new wolf in town, and that wolf is handling deer-sized game and some of the smaller animals that wolves eat. It's handling that way better than the average wolf population. However, there's still elk and moose out there to eat. Now, moose are huge. They're bigger than a horse, okay? So what kind of wolf is really going to do the best when all there is to eat out there is, if elk is a 800-pound animal, that's on the small end, and moose up there 1,500 pounds, and that's what I got to eat is 1,500 pounds of horns. I'm going to need one heck of a wolf, okay? So the small wolves are going to go extinct pretty quick. They're being outcompeted left and right. In fact, even the average size wolf is not going to cut it anymore. Only the huge wolves are able to survive and reproduce. Now remember, Charles Darwin said that the goal of all organisms is to survive and reproduce, right? So that's what's going to be happening here. These huge wolves are able to feed their pups. They're able to reproduce. The lady wolves are choosing the huge male wolves, right? So that's what's happening. And in this type of selection, then it's going to go way the other way. It's going to go one direction, not like the pop group One Direction. But what we're going to get here, the new average wolf would have been an absolute colossal wolf before. Hardly any wolves were that big. Now that's the average, that's the going rate. And now there's some that are like super huge. Super huge wolves. This type of selection, where our wolf population is changing an extreme amount. In fact, the average wolf doesn't even exist anymore. This is going to be the extinction. And this is eventually going to become its own new species. It's not even a wolf anymore. It's some other thing. Monster. Wolf monster. Whatever. Okay? This is called directional selection. And in this case, the selection is going that way. It's in my little example, the direction is this way. It's favoring the huge body size, but that isn't always the case. Sometimes it favors the small body size. There used to be, T-Rexes and things in the world, and now we don't have anything that big. The closest, something real similar to it would be like a modern Roadrunner. The thing's only like 9 or 10 inches tall, right? It does the same thing, runs around on the ground, chases things down, eats them, right? Lives just like a T-Rex did, but it's essentially just a tiny T-Rex tiny little T-Rex, and that's directional selection. The habitat's changed, the environment's changed. Things, the world was completely different. You couldn't handle a 40-ton T-Rex anymore. But an 8-inch tall T-Rex does just fine. Foot tall T-Rex does just fine. And so the direction was the other way. It favored the tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier. So how is it that we have a lot of organisms in the world today that you know, you look back at these history shows, natural history shows and stuff, and you go, oh, well, all these extinct species were huge. Well, things were different then. And a lot of times those species didn't necessarily just end altogether. Directional selection took over, and now we just have smaller versions of them. Last but not least, we can have, oh man, looks like I gotta go work. Stand by, I'll see you soon. Okay, I'm gonna have to hold you kind of up and see if this will glare really bad. That marker sucks. Will you grab me a different marker? Okay, so in this type of selection, things become extremely stable because whatever that organism is perfect for their habitat, okay? So you've probably heard that like alligators are basically a living dinosaur. And we'll talk about body size. Again, small, huge, a number of individuals. In this type of selection, let's say there's the average like we had, you know, kind of bell curve. And for whatever reason, that body type is perfect. It's not going to get any better. The really, really small ones, they die in fights, and they get eaten by other alligators. Okay? The really, really large ones, there's not enough food for them. There's not enough energy there to maintain this colossal body size. And those are out. And what happens is that middle, that sort of average it squeezes in tight, and that's the only size. So why is it that an alligator in Florida, alligator in Georgia, alligator in Texas, alligator in Alabama, alligator in Louisiana, alligator 40 million years ago, all exact same size and look exactly the same? It's because that is the system that works. That is what fits the niche better than any other body size or shape or anything like that. And so why is the coelacanth not changed in 100 million years? Why is the alligator not changed in 40 million years? It's because of this process right here, and it's called stabilizing selection. These are all modes of evolution or patterns of evolution, okay? So evolution is where we get diversity. However, it can also be where we get extinction. But these patterns of evolution is how we end up with new species all the time, and some species that haven't changed at all is these patterns.